you ask most about the margin calls, collateral safety. We're going to be talking about the LTV. And here with me, we'll be talking Pablo. You want to introduce yourself? A few words?
Yes, hi everyone. This is Pablo here. I'm the regional manager for LATAM for Xapo Bank, and very excited about this session, right? I've been in crypto for over 10 years, a Bitcoiner for over 10 years as well. I've done many mistakes early on, right? So I wish I would have had this session before. So really happy to go through this, right, and teach you guys more about what's available at Xapo and in the market, right? So you are able to make better decisions than myself 10 years ago, right? So let's get this going. As Piotr said, we had questions, right? We had over 70 questions. So we're going to try to do our best, right, to go over all of them. We group them into main themes, right? So we're going to just get started, right? There's a lot to cover. So thanks everyone for joining.
Okay, cool. So let me just start off with let's just jump right into it. So one of the most commonly asked thing was around how does the Bitcoin backed loan Xapo work, and also like from a start to finish what the process looks like, what's the mechanics behind it. So I'm going to briefly describe you the process. Now Xapo has those vaults, and we have a Bitcoin vault. The vault is actually the starting point for the loan, and this is where the collateral.
All right, Peter, it looks like we are not able to hear you. Let's continue. So basically, right, we have 4 steps, right? We have the first step, as Peter was saying, right? We have the collateral part where you need to deposit, right, your Bitcoin into a secure BTC vault, right, within your Xapo account. Right, this is the first step. Then we have step 2, right, which is the drawdown. Right, this is very fast. Right, this is when actually your funds are deposited into your USD account, and this happens literally within under a minute, right? So this is one of the things. Then step 3, then you need to manage the loan, right? This is when it gets not tricky, but you need to be very conscious of what's happening here. And then we're going to actually talk a bit more about some of the numbers, right? But manage the loan actually means track your LTV, right? What's your outstanding balance, repayment status in real time in the app. And there's also a feature, right, that many of our members actually ask about, which is loan upsizing. This is where you can actually increase the loan that you already have active in your account, and you can actually borrow more USD through the same loan, right? Always as long as you keep a healthy LTV, right? Which I'll talk more about this in a bit, right? And then the step 4, right, is actually the repayment part, right, and the release, right? Here, we don't have a set payment schedule, right? You can actually pay anytime during the term, right? As long as the loan is actually fully repaid by the end of the period. Right, so you can actually repay early with no penalties. Right, this is something important to know. There are no penalties and no accrued interest if you pay first and then you pay and then the principal. Right, so you can actually choose to repay in USD or in Bitcoin. One thing that it's important also to know, right, is that as long as your loan is active, the collateral in the vault cannot be withdrawn, right, until the loan is fully repaid. So this cannot be touched, right, until the moment that you fully repay. So it's very simple, right? You get to keep your Bitcoin and access liquidity without the need to sell, and of course, hoping that price appreciates over time. Right. Peter, let me know when you're back in and we can continue with some of these questions, right? Again, as I mentioned, a lot of the questions have to do with the LTV, right? What is the LTV, right? Also, what happens if it rises? What happens if we get a margin call, right? How do we actually notify our users? What are the top-up options, right? So I'll go over this a bit. This is a very important part of the whole process, right? Because you can actually lose the collateral, right? If you don't manage this right. Of course, we put a lot of attention into this. We actually send a lot of notifications to our members, but you need to pay attention, right? So this part is actually very important. On what you can actually borrow, right? The maximum LTV that we have all available at the moment is 40%, right? By LTV, loan to value, right? So how much you can actually borrow from the collateral that you leave in your account. 40% means that for every dollar that you have in Bitcoin, you can actually borrow up to 40 cents of that dollar, right? So by design, it's a very conservative approach, and we try to keep it like that so your Bitcoin doesn't get liquidated, right? So some of the numbers that you need to memorize, right? And again, this has to do with the margin call and how you manage your loan, right? So there are some triggers that we have, right? And think of them as traffic lights, right? That we send the warnings to. So at 50% LTV, that's actually a warning zone, and we notify you. So you get a notification from us. Right? So this is already telling you that you need to take some action. Then at 65%, this is where the margin call happens, right? And what's a margin call, right? We talk a lot about these terms, but maybe not many people actually know what a margin call is. A margin call is basically a warning, right, that you need to take action and you need to do something. At 60% margin call means that you actually need to step up and actually act quickly, right? So what are the things that you need to do here, right? If you get one of these notifications, you either need to pay back part of your loan, right? Or top up your collateral, right? You need to actually deposit a bit more collateral. And then at 80%, right, this is when the liquidation actually happens, right? So we don't want to get into this part. Liquidation is actually when we actually sell your BTC and to actually repay the collateral of the loan. Right. This is it. Is something also important to know, right? Is that when this collateral is actually sold, there's no liquidation fees, right? You're not you're not liquidated, you're not going to be penalized, right, on top of the event itself. So this is actually something that we need to look into. See, just checking a bit internally, see some of the questions, and just checking with Peter if he's able to join back. Then we got a couple of questions. Also about how can we protect, right? We just discussed about what happens if a margin call comes or things to prevent get liquidated, right? So there are things that we need to look into that over here, right? Especially on 4 stages, right? First of all, don't max up your borrowing power, right? That's because you can borrow up to 40% of your Bitcoin value. It doesn't always mean that you should, right? We know how quickly Bitcoin can actually move, right? We've seen already drawdowns of 50% in the past, right? So this can happen very quickly, right? So maybe some tips, just consider taking 20, 30% LTV, right? To give yourself a bit of a buffer. Right? Know your safety numbers, right? Number 2, try to know what I just mentioned, right? The 50% warning zone, right? Always be on the lookout. Something we're always going to try to, right? At Xapo, you have a relationship management. I'm in the relationship management team, right? As mentioned, go and looking after the time. And sometimes, believe me, sometimes it's like 12 at night, 2 in the morning, right? And we call customers because they're close to a liquidation, to a margin call, right? So customers really appreciate this. We don't want to get into this point, right? But we do it. We know how important it is, right? Not to lose your Bitcoin. So we really try to help on that part, right? But it's actually your responsibility to know these numbers very well, right? The 60% LTV, right? The warning songs, the 80% liquidation threshold, right? So all this you need to be checking, right? We send emails, we send notifications, but you also need to enable them and know them, right? In order to avoid being liquidated.
Should be back now.
Amazing. We just go in some of the...
Oh, so you can hear me, Raul.
What's that?
You can hear me now, Pablo.
I can hear you.
Sorry, I had some issue on the technical side. But on your point, I think the safety numbers and always talking about keeping some Bitcoin on the side, so not going all in. Whatever your Bitcoin stack is, don't go all in. Just keep some Bitcoin on the side. So in those cases, when volatility happens, when the price goes down, and you're asked for a top up, you actually have this Bitcoin, so you can easy top up. You can decrease that LTV and make sure your loan is safe. This is critical. And this actually worked during the last price crashes. We had once in February, as you guys probably remember, and then the second one in June, early June. And in both of those cases, we've seen people topping up collateral and actually withstanding volatility with little liquidation. So that was like a proper test of this working.
Amazing. And we mentioned, right, you need to act fast. right? Whenever it starts dropping, just look after, right, after the health of your loan, right? Top up quickly or repay part of your loan. We are there, right? Xapo, we are there for you, but I don't know, sometimes it can't happen at 4 a.m., right? At 5 a.m. So be careful before you go to sleep. Just look into this now and turn on notifications. That's something very important. Sometimes it can be as simple as turning on notifications on your phone and on your emails.
And absolutely, there was a few questions that we received around the collateral, like how this collateral is held, whether it's lent out or rehypothecated. I think that one is very interesting to comment on. So obviously, if you're dealing with Xapo, it's a regulated bank, and we also have a VASP license. So obviously, we do have a segregation of client assets. It's not commingled. We have a best class institutional grade custody that is reused for that purpose, for the purpose of keeping collateral. And definitely we have two layers. So there is a cryptographic layer and there is a physical layer to it. So on the cryptographic side, we obviously have we use the private key sharding through MPC and really robust security setup. This means that the private keys are never materializing any. Obviously, if you're looking from a custody perspective, one place at any one time, and this MPC is basically helping us to provide security at scale for that amount of Bitcoin that we have at our custody. That also removes any single point of failure from our setup. So in the past, we may have had the multi-sig and solutions like that. Now we don't have any point of failure because there is never one complete place where the key is being assembled that could be stolen or misused by any party. And also we have this physics, so that's on the cryptographic side. And also on the physical side, obviously we have some of those cosigners in undisclosed locations, in physical bunkers. Some of the customers are even have been flying in and looking at this infrastructure. That's really straight from the James Bond movie infrastructure and security setup, because we don't want to compromise on security. Xapo was always known for its security. At some point, like in 2017 or 2018, we were one of the biggest custodians of Bitcoin in the world, and we definitely continue on that path. But obviously since then we evolved and now we are offering additional services. So on that security piece, I think we have quite a strong setup. Now, having said that, the piece around rehypothecation is obviously critical, right? Because we have seen many failed attempts in the past where different parties were rehypothecating. And for those who may not know what the rehypothecation is, like rehypothecation means basically that we take the Bitcoin and we do something with it, whereas you as a customer, you think that this Bitcoin is untouched. And this is the bad practice. This shouldn't be you shouldn't be doing this, right? And at Xapo, we have very strict non-rehypothecation policy. So we believe very strongly that the only thing that Bitcoin as collateral should be doing is securing your loan, right? That's the only thing that it should be doing. Now, some customers were asking, why are we not generating yield on that Bitcoin? Well, that's exactly the reason, right? Because the collateral itself should be untouched. The only thing that this collateral needs to do is secure the loan, and then it gets back to you when the loan is repaid. So just to sum up this piece, we combine this infrastructure, institutional grade custody with strict non-rehypothecation policy, and then basically you see where the collateral sits throughout the loan duration, because that collateral sits in your vault and you can actually see the balance and you can see it's there and it's securing the loan.
And this is a question that we usually get asked, right? Especially by foreigners, right? They want their Bitcoin to just be there, right? Be there, be at Xapo, be at our vault, right? And they always ask, what do we do with it, right? Is it ever lent out, right? So as Piotr said, no, Xapo does not lend it. We don't stake it. We don't reuse it or anything, right? Everything is held under our Xapo vault, right? So has been set up like this since the beginning and continues to be like that.
So I also want to talk about the interest rates, because we have had many customers asking and prospect people asking about the interest rates and how they bring determine what are the fees and the variable rates versus fixed rates and all of that. Also the duration of the loan. So just to give you a short recap. So right now what we are currently offering is a loan that you can take for 1 year, and then you can actually extend it for the next 12 months, and you can keep doing this multiple times. So in practice, you can be borrowing for 1 year, and then upon the interest only repayment, you can roll over this loan into the next 12 months and then another 12 months. That's the current setup. Now we know that the preference, the Bitcoiners' preference, universal preference, like we know that we want those loans to have a longer duration. Like we don't want really to borrow against Bitcoin for like a payday loan or like 30 days. Bitcoiners in general prefer to keep this loan for longer because we know how the market moves. Like we know the 4-year cycle and stuff. So I think the preference and also our focus will be looking at how we can in the future increase those tenures. But right now, that 1 10-year is not limiting because it's 1 year, but then you can extend it and you can keep doing this multiple times. Now, in terms of the interest rates, this is also interesting. So I think right now what we have is the variable rate that has been actually sitting at around 10% for quite a long time now. And this rate is, I think it's going to be interesting for you to understand like what is influencing this rate. So this rate is simple summation of basically we have a cost of capital, right? We have a cost of funding and on the dollar side. And then there is obviously some margin that Xapo is adding onto that. And then there may be some additional risk premium. And then some of those three numbers is basically the rate that you get as a customer. And I think as time goes by and also the environment matures, we are going into single digit interest rates environment. And so our 10% is a starting point, but we are trending towards single digits. And we will have some updates later this year moving forward. I think industry is moving there. I think we'll be moving there as well. I think it's a great development. It's great for Bitcoiners and Bitcoin in general because look, Bitcoin is the best collateral in the world, right? It's super collateral. It has all those characteristics that other pieces of it, other assets don't have. And if this was universally understood, then the premiums on those rates would be lower. So those rates will go down. And that's a great win for both Bitcoiners and for us and the whole ecosystem. And the rate currently is a variable rate. We are looking at the fixed rate also. It's not yet on the roadmap, but we are exploring different angles there and looking if that will be something that people would be interested in to lock in that rate versus have it floating. That's something that definitely we'll have to look in like moving forward from now.
And in terms of fees there, right? I think it's important, besides the rate, right? It's important to know that we only charge interest only, right? We only charge that. There's no other hidden fees, right? For arrangement, for closure, whenever a margin call happens, right? There's no liquidation fees, no penalties also for early repayments. Sometimes you don't need to have the loan for the whole year, right? Or even 3 months, 4 months, right? If you just took a loan, right, to use it within a month, right? You can just pay it early and there's no hidden fees over there, right? So that's something important for you to know. It's very simple to actually track it on your account.
And that has been a differentiator because other players, obviously we are looking at other players and other players are looking at us. And like within the Bitcoin space, there always been like a kind of some fee, origination fee, early settlement fee, liquidation fee. We decided that we don't want to introduce unnecessary fees. And so that also simplifies the experience for the Bitcoiner, right? Because it just, as a Bitcoiner, I know that the interest is the only thing that I pay here. And that's it, basically.
Exactly. Having said this, Peter, I'm seeing a couple of questions about what happens in a bear market, right? Or if something like COVID-19 happens again, right? Crash or a couple other price movements, right? What happens then, right? Or how are we able to support our users in terms of this? So
the COVID situation is interesting one because as far as I recall, Bitcoin lost like 40% of its value in like 2 or 3 days or something like that back in March 2020. And so in situations like this, you obviously has this stateful relationship with the loan because actually it's an actively managed LTV, like you're managing your LTV, right? And if you open the loan in the app, you are in control of your collateral. You are managing the LTV. You are monitoring it, you have access to it. You can add or withdraw excess collateral. That's one of the features that we recently added. So many people ask for it also. And so now with that full control of in and out, when you have the control over collateral, obviously, if you start from 40% LTV, even like 40% crush within 2 or 3 days would trigger a margin call, right? And so again, this is critical that in cases like this, there is a swift action, there is a prompt action, push notifications are enabled. The RMs, the relationship managers are always trying to reach out to customers, you in that case. And so we've had those cases during February crash. Remember the February 5th crash when the Bitcoin really went like from 90s to 60s. It was that huge liquidation event for everyone. And actually, we've stand beautifully because we had the relationship managers that were reaching out to the customers who were at 70% LTV, and they were actually asking them, prompting them, reminding them that the additional collateral top up would help to decrease that LTV and make sure that those loans are safe. And as a result, all those loans not only survived but thrived because we saw customers keeping those loans and now upsizing or using even more funds from that credit line. So I think being like really knowing that you're at the end of the day, you as a user are in control and you can like influence that LTV and you decide how far away from liquidation price you are. This is something that as long as you like stay in control of that and don't go like become unresponsive or ignore that when you see the price action, then you will be safe there. And it's just a question of responsible risk management here.
Exactly. And this is where knowing your warnings, knowing your numbers, as we mentioned before, right? The 50% warning, the 65% margin call, right? And getting close to the 80% liquidation price, it's important for every user, right? Of course, from Xapo, right? As Piotr mentioned, I'm on the relationship management, client coverage group, right? We try to do as much as we can, right? Actually, many of our members, right, colleagues are on the call, right? Some of them are the ones that call you guys, right, in the middle of the night, right? Wake you up. This is important, right? It can be funny now, but when that happens, it's actually good to have someone looking after you, right? But besides that, again, you need to know your numbers. You need to be able to manage your account and your numbers well to not be liquidated, right?
Yes, absolutely. And so I think it's yet another tool in a Bitcoiner tool set and financial strategy because like as a fire, like it can burn your house or you can cook with it, right? It's like it's just a tool, and as long as you're responsibly handling it, then you'll be good, I think. So with this leads me to the use cases because I'm not sure if we talk about the use cases, Pablo, right? The
No,
main
not
use
much.
cases that people so
Not really.
so let's talk about this because like okay, once I know that I think I want to use this because I think it's a great Bitcoiner play, right? Think about this. Like you are keeping or hodling or accumulating a currency that appreciates versus you're borrowing and spending a depreciating currency, right? The fiat currency. And so that's the ultimate play. Obviously, as someone like in the middle of a crypto winter or bear market, that may sound like a little bit funny, but if you zoom out, you will see if you think where that Bitcoin is going, where we think the Bitcoin is going, then this is the trade that makes sense. And so looking at what customers are currently using the loans for and the borrowing facility, because like it's not a fixed term, like it's not an inflexible loan anymore. It's almost evolved with all those features like upsizing and extension and flexible collateral management. It almost becomes like a Bitcoin line of credit, right? Where you can just borrow more and then repay and then borrow more. And so we've seen people use it in different ways. Like last time I looked at the data, like 40% of the usage was actually not for personal expenses, by the way. It was for investing in other hard assets, investing in stocks, investing in real estate, investing in Bitcoin too. So increasing their Bitcoin exposure. And then this was followed by 30% of people that were using it for personal expenses. So I guess people being in the bear market and now trying to withstand that time. We know that every 4 years there is this 1 year when the price goes down and it feels like Bitcoin is dead. But that is great tool also to help you survive through it without selling, right? And while you can actually not only hodl, but you can actually accumulate even more Bitcoin during that time, right? What do you think, Pablo?
Exactly. And this is one of the main requests, right, that we get from the client coverage group, right? We always get asked, what can we do with this loan that we actually take? Because we want to invest in strategy, invest in any other stocks that is there, right? That it's also available, right, within the app. You can actually do that within the Xapo app. But I wanted to ask you also, Piotr, let's say someone wants to buy a house, right? What are the limits at the moment, right? We can actually, somebody can enable.
So look, in terms of limits, they are pretty high because we've been facilitating loans up to $5 million on the retail side. So this covered almost all cases that people had, and in the retail space, right? And obviously this would come with 1 year, 10-year, extendable, obviously, so you could keep it for many years, and then probably with single-digit interest rate.
Amazing. So up to $5 million, and of course, this always depends on what you're holding within your account, right? So depending
Exactly.
on what your BTC holdings, right, that you have, that's the maximum loan that you're going to be able to get, right? So this is
Exactly.
also important.
And this is one of the questions I saw in that list. Was also someone asked about, I have this limit, let's say it's 50K, how can I go beyond that limit, right? How can I increase that limit? And so the answer is pretty straightforward. We give you amount of credit, we pre-approve you for amount of credit and give you a personalized limit based on what you hold at Xapo, right? So how much Bitcoin you have, we give you 40% of that, right? And so if you want to increase that limit, the fastest way to increase this limit is deposit to BTC to Xapo and then reach out to your relationship manager and make the change. This process is taking on average like within 24 hours or something like that. And then after that, we can change the limit, adjust the limit based on your holding, and then we can actually facilitate, like you'll be able to self-serve and borrow more, either upsize or create a new loan. So the logic is pretty straightforward because we are not looking for credit history, we are not looking for pay slips. We are looking at the Bitcoin collateral, right? And the Bitcoin balances.
Exactly. And these are some of the most common use cases that we've got.
I think for Bitcoiners is a godsend, almost, in a sense that, like, Bitcoiner going to traditional bank and asking for unsecured loan, like mortgage or unsecured loan, they will be asked so many questions, right? And there will be so much paperwork to fill, and it will take weeks to get it done. Whereas here with Bitcoin backed loan, none of that isn't actually needed, right? We are looking at Bitcoin collateral. We are looking that your account is good standing. We are looking that, like, you are an active member, and then we are able to facilitate those loans.
Exactly. I think the advantage is that our members already have a history, right, within the account, already have their holdings, right, the Bitcoin holdings within the account. So it's very straightforward, very simple to actually take out the loan, right, and manage it depending on what's the use case, as we mentioned, right? Some users, right, they use it for their everyday spending because they don't want to sell their Bitcoin, right, or just to some trigger events, right, just to buy a house, right, or to invest, to keep investing, right? So it's very simple within the app.
Yes. Someone asks on the chat, why Xapo cannot liquidate minimum amounts of BTC to get below 80% LTV threshold? I think it's a great, amazing question. Yes, we are thinking about this, and we will probably do it. This is actually is called partial liquidations, and it's something that we would need to introduce at some point. Meaning, instead of hard liquidation, you would, in unfortunate case of liquidation, you would just get partially liquidated. So only the amount applicable to lower that LTV a bit would be sold. I can see that other players are already offering this. I see this as a very friendly addition to the overall experience for a Bitcoiner. And I think this needs to be on our roadmap too. So without like committing to it, I can see that, like, we are looking at this definitely.
Amazing.
All right.
Amazing.
When is the best time to take up a loan in a BTC cycle? So that one, look, none of this is investment advice or financial advice. Obviously, we are just casually talking about this. But you can use the loan in the bear market, and you can use the loan in bull market, right? Obviously, in the bull market, prices go up, so your collateral appreciates. But as I said, in the bear market, it can be a strategic tool for A, accumulating more cheap sats, or B, living like you can live off of your Bitcoin. Like you can cover your expenses without selling, because now probably when the prices are depressed and we are in the bear market, that may be suboptimal situation to sell now, right? So you may prefer to actually borrow and keep the collateral. So in both cases, regardless of the timing, the market is hard. Regardless of the timing, I think that tool can be very valuable in both bull markets and bear markets. What do you think, Pablo?
Exactly. Depends. I think most of us, right, ones that are Bitcoin holders, right, we actually invested in this thinking of the long-term appreciation, right, and because we believe where Bitcoin is going. Right. So I think depending also on the use case that you have, right? If you have the need of that liquidity, then it's a good time. If we're in the bear market, right? Of course, it's actually a good time to take up a loan because the upside is a lot. If we are on a bull market, right? We're taking advantage of that collateral that we have, the extra collateral, right? And we can also continue living, right, or doing some other investment without having to sell our Bitcoin, right? So everyone knows that we're here for the long run, right? So I think this is a tool to help you manage this part, right, of this.
Absolutely. All right. I'm looking at other questions. I think we covered most of them. There is also one on the collateral we covered. Do you have any coming on the chat? One question for the audience.
Questions on the partial liquidation, we got it.
Okay. Oh, someone asked about the United States. So I think Xapo is not serving US audience.
We don't have a time frame at the moment. I'm seeing it here that we can actually tell you, Mr. Bitcoin, there.
All right. Cool. And I also wanted, maybe there was also one question around like what I can do once I have opened the loan. I think because since we've started with the product, we've launched pretty straightforward version of the product. You borrow, the cash instantly hits your account, and then that's it. But since then, we actually shipped some of those updates this year. They are pretty exciting. I think we discussed the excess collateral, right? So withdraw excess collateral. The fact that Bitcoin goes up and you can withdraw additional collateral from doesn't need to be there is a very important, like highly requested feature that some of you maybe even raised this. We've added this, is available to all loans. The second one, which I'm not sure we mentioned that.
Okay, looks like we lost Peter again. Okay, guys, just to recap, right? We're getting close to the time.
Are those extensions? As I said, the duration of the loan, it is important so that you can keep your loan for longer. And we've been doing those loan extensions manually, but right now they've been fully automated and are self-serve. So you can actually open the app and you can see in the loan section that you can extend your loan for the next 12 months, which is for Bitcoiners is everything, because it gives you more time to repay. It gives you more time to adjust your strategy, and it puts you at ease, right? Because you don't have this due date looming, but you can just settle the interest and then keep the loan for a long term.
Exactly. Amazing. Peter, I think we can wrap it up, right? And we're getting to the end of the session, right? Hopefully it's been useful, right, for everyone. Again, this was mainly this session, right, was for retail clients, right? All the terms, right, the LTV, the interest rate, and everything was for retail clients. We have a product, right, for institutions, right, that we can maybe do another session or webinar later on to talk more about that. But this is specifically for retail clients and institutions within the Xapo Bank, right? So I'm sure there are going to be more questions right after this, or if you want to know more about the product, please feel free to DM me or Peter to continue the discussion, right? And to guide you through the app and through some of your comments or questions, like the ones that we had, right? That they're really great, and we're actually taking some feedback to even improve our product.
Absolutely. So that is actually the key. Like, don't be shy. Reach out to us in DMs, because we are reading all the pieces of feedback. We want to improve the product, right? We are driven by Bitcoiners. Like, this is built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners, trying to make the experience as best as it can be. And then we will also, I think, drop the link on our profile, right, on X to the website where you can actually learn more about the loans, see the latest calculators, latest numbers, how does it look like, what are the new things and capabilities that are there. So all of this will be shared post these sessions, and I think the recording also will be shared there, right? As well, Pablo.
Yeah, will be shared as well. So anyone can go back and review a couple of things that we discussed here. Again,
All right.
feel free to reach out, and thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks, everyone. That's a wrap then.
Ciao.